Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome again to many of you who've been here all afternoon, and welcome to those of you who have come to hear Congressman Joseph Kennedy III. 54 years ago, almost to the day, Congressman Kennedy's great-uncle, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, spoke at Amherst College in the very spot where you now sit. He spoke here as part of the groundbreaking ceremonies for Frost Library, the building behind me. And on that day, President Kennedy honored the poet Robert Frost, and this afternoon we have honored President Kennedy and his visit to Amherst. We host this event in partnership with the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum in celebration of the 100th anniversary of President Kennedy's birth. And throughout the afternoon, we've been joined by local and state elected officials who have joined students, faculty, staff, alumni, trustees, trustee emeriti, and community members in reflecting on Kennedy's visit to campus and on his speech. I want to thank the elected officials who have taken the time to be here today. Thank you very much. And also the rest of you for your time. I can't imagine a more fitting tribute to the late president, or certainly a greater honor for all of us than to have Congressman Joseph Kennedy join us and speak on this occasion. Congressman Kennedy, as many of you know, is now in his third term as representative of the Commonwealth's 4th District, and he is increasingly visible and influential in Washington and beyond. Born and raised in Massachusetts, Congressman Kennedy graduated from Stanford University with a bachelor's degree in management science and engineering. He has a twin brother, Matt, who also attended Stanford. And as a college president, I couldn't help but be impressed by the news from his friends and even his brother that Joseph Kennedy III was the most studious and serious student. After graduating from Stanford, Kennedy joined the Peace Corps, an organization that was established by his great-uncle, President Kennedy. A fluent Spanish speaker, he spent 2 years serving in the Dominican Republic, where he designed and helped implement an economic development project near Puerto Plata. He speaks of his experience in the Dominican Republic as amazing and formative. And now I quote him, "There's nothing those kids, those babies, or young men I was working with, nothing they could ever do that was going to get them into Harvard Law School. I was no more talented, I was no smarter, I was no better than any of them. I just had the resources and the support and the platform." End of quote. He has also said that the people he got to know in the Dominican Republic and work with are the reason that he's doing the work he's doing today. After his 2 years in the Dominican Republic, Joseph Kennedy entered Harvard Law School, where he earned his JD. And there he also met his wife, Lauren, in a class they took from then Professor Elizabeth Warren. Kennedy served as assistant district attorney for portions of Boston and Cape Cod after law school. But since 2013, he has proudly served the 4th District of Massachusetts in the seat from which Barney Frank retired in 2012. This is a diverse district that stretches from the suburbs of Boston to the more industrial cities of Massachusetts' South Coast. He has gained a reputation from his colleagues in the House and from his constituents as a legislator who works incredibly hard, who rolls up his sleeves to master the legislative process, who has a sense of urgency and great passion, but also respects process and is genuinely focused on his constituents. Focused not on the flashier aspects of constituent services, but on the hard work. Each term, he visits all 34 towns in his district, holding meetings at the library, to listen and help navigate the federal bureaucracies that people have to navigate. He rarely sends handwritten notes. He has a youth council that includes student representatives from the schools in the district and with whom he meets to hear about the issues and points of view of young people. Congressman Kennedy's peers, his predecessors, his mentors say about him that he is whip-smart, unfailingly polite, thoughtful, a careful crafter of legislation, and understated and humble. But over the past year, he has also become highly visible for his eloquent and unflinching stands on access to affordable health care, support for transgender rights, for protecting people with DACA status, and for racial justice, among others. When Speaker of the House Paul Ryan called the plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act an act of mercy, Kennedy took the floor and said, and I quote, "With all due respect to our Speaker, he and I must have read different scripture. The one I read calls on us to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, and to comfort the sick. This is not an act of mercy," he continued. "It is an act of malice." That speech went viral, as they say. Those comments got over 10 million hits relatively quickly, and the next day, in an exchange he had with a Republican lawyer about the bill's cuts to addiction and mental health coverage, he made further remarks that also went viral. And the next day, when he opposed efforts to cut off Planned Parenthood reimbursements, he got 1.8 million views for his comments right away. Some have seen his outspokenness over the past year as a departure, but those who know him well counter by saying this is who he is and who he has always been. Passionate about equal rights, about job creation in a dramatically changing economic environment, about immigration and criminal justice reform. Passionate about all of these issues, but also reasonable and wise enough to know one has to take the long game into account as a legislator. He is a vocal advocate for STEM education, vocational schools, and community colleges. His Revitalize American Manufacturing and Innovation Act was signed into law by Obama in 2014. It supports jobs and directions toward a new economy. According to a study from the Lugar Center and Georgetown University's McCourt School of Public Policy, Congressman Kennedy is the most bipartisan New England member of the House of Representatives. And that doesn't even count his regular morning workouts with a bipartisan group of House members, with Mr. Mullins, I believe. His voice is being heard not only inside the Democratic Party, but also inside the entire House of Representatives and across the nation. Among the most impressive things I read about Congressman Kennedy came from interviews with his friends. They struggled to find anything negative or critical to say about him. And in fact, one of them, his roommate at Stanford, Jason Collins, a pro basketball player, I believe was the one who finally said, the only thing we could ever find to say that might have been critical was that he doesn't use enough product in his hair. He, they all said, was the person to call when you had a problem, a true friend and a wonderful human being. On June 22nd, 2017, speaking against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, Congressman Kennedy challenged his peers to do more for the people they represent. And let me end with this quote from Congressman Kennedy. "The America that I know understands that our greatness comes from our goodness, that we lean into challenges, we don't yield to them, that the frustration we see in our streets and our communities is a cry for our government to be as good and as decent as the people we aim to serve. We deserve nothing less. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Joseph Kennedy III.
Madam President, we need to hang out more often. That was quite something. I will be sure to tell my wife that they never found anything bad about me and that I'm increasingly influential. I am certain she would beg to differ on both of those things. Thank you so much for the extraordinary generous introduction. I am thrilled to be here today with all of you. Thank you for including me in this special celebration. There's a couple of folks here I want to recognize, but before I do, Madam President, it's got a certain ring to it that I was expecting to say more often. Sometimes these things happen. Under your steady leadership, thousands of students have walked into this campus, and a few short years later, walk off it ready to change the world. Thank you for your unconditional support for every single one of them. Grateful and honored to be here with you today. To the Board of Trustees, and Amos and Barbara Hostetter, and Steve Kidder, dear friends, your connection to this college has never let any of you stray very far from these grounds, no matter where you call home. More than just shaping the buildings here at Amherst, you've helped shape the lives of those studying in these halls. And to the faculty, many acquire knowledge to pursue their own wealth and success. You accumulate it to share with the next generation. Your selflessness and patience is inspiring. Thank you for having me as well. To Steve Rothstein, the director of the JFK Library Foundation, a dear friend, goes back for, sorry Steve, but multiple generations with my family. Thank you for being here and your extraordinary stewardship at the library. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to be here, and I did what I would like to think any speaker before this building would do, which is I reached out to a former member of my staff who happens to be an alumni here. And I said, what should I expect? What can I do? What should I say? What's going to happen on a beautiful Saturday here in late October? And her response was clear. Well, students certainly don't go to the library on a beautiful Saturday to hear a politician speak. So keep it brief and go off to Antonio's. So hard to find good help. On a serious note, you all as students are responsible for the prestige that this college has earned over the past nearly 2 centuries. I know you will all continue that proud legacy. And so let me begin by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer by training, a lawyer by schooling, a politician by trade. So let's talk poetry. This one was a little bit of a tougher one to write. We gather to commemorate a defining moment in a defining place for 2 extraordinary Americans. One, a proud Yankee poet, and the other, a proud Irish-American president. Both restless thinkers, rooted deeply, stubbornly, in this New England soil. Both lifelong students of the experience of ordinary men. avid explorers of the space between lofty vision and humble experience, of big dreams and hard realities. Neither aimed to proselytize or preach, but simply to connect with our most basic humanity, our wants, our needs, pains, and promises. In this shared vocation, the poet and politician found common cause and mutual admiration for the other's art. It brought President John F. Kennedy right here a half-century ago to the newly minted Robert Frost Library, where he said, as you all I'm sure have heard today, quote, "When power leads man towards arrogance, poetry reminds him of his limitations. When power narrows the areas of man's concern, poetry reminds him of the richness and the diversity of his existence. When power corrupts, poetry cleanses. For art establishes the basic truths, basic human truths, which must serve as a touchstone for our judgment." Over 50 years later, those words hit home for those of us gathered here today, undoubtedly worried that our deeply fractured country has lost that touchstone for judgment. It is no secret that we are here in turbulent times. A president of the United States accusing Gold Star families of lying. A foreign adversary knee-deep in our democracy. A Justice Department backing away from civil rights protections by the day. A budget, a tax plan, a health care bill that will bring the sick and the struggling and the suffering to their knees. Immigration and refugee policies that leave devastated families and communities in their wake. A worldview that threatens the work of generations of American diplomats, and a vision that targets the values that America has long defended. A current administration that has turned American life into a zero-sum game. For me to win, you must lose. Where your life can only be rich if somebody else is robbed. Where I am empowered if the other is oppressed. Where there's room for some but not all, me but not you, these but not those. Where policies and politics reflect a society where to be different or diverse is weak, to be vulnerable is shameful and scorned. And that is not who we are. And this dark worldview has left many disoriented, searching for what binds us together in times that threaten to tear us apart. Desperately hunting for common cause, for better angels, for decency that makes us proud to be of these United States. And it is in moments like these, in this one, that the role for our liberal arts is critical, as precise and as deeply needed as it was when President Kennedy stood in this very spot. For we trust our artists to expose the burdens that many of us bury within. We ask them to bravely share their vulnerabilities to help us recognize our own. We depend on them to remind us of our individual frailties, that they are not unique, but rather built upon, can fortify common cause. Nearly a century ago, Langston Hughes reminded America that, quote, "I too sing America," in a rebuke to a viciously segregated nation and a plea for his country to see his humanity and his dignity, not the color of his skin. In 1969, Joni Mitchell faced a war-weary nation in the depths of Vietnam and asked, quote, "Oh, my friend, what time is this? To trade the handshake for the fist." And today, Chance the Rapper, yes, Chance the Rapper, looks at us and says, I know you're scared. You should ask us if we scared too. If you was there, then we just knew you cared too. Forcing all of us to confront an enduring blind spot for the challenges facing minority communities. Poets, painters, see the world that surrounds them with a clear eye. Their empathy can translate despair into beauty. Their humanity finds color in our shadows. And their optimism orients us towards what is big and real and tough and worth fighting for. Those values of justice and freedom and love. Art and academia don't just allow for introspection, they require it. And in so doing, they inspire us to create the tangible societal change that otherwise resides solely in our imagination. It's an ambitious assignment. And I don't believe that Mr. Frost or President Kennedy could envision the change that would begin within this building behind me. Students from nearly every state in this union, in 54 countries, challenging themselves from 8 a.m. until well past midnight. Students like Peter Tang, 2010 class president, who graduated and immediately entered Teach for America in Memphis. 7 years later, Peter's still in Tennessee, working to strengthen the education system for low-income families. Or Carolyn Suffren, a pre-med graduate who's dedicated much of her career to addressing the health care needs for incarcerated women. Or Josh Block, who has stood by Gavin Grimm's side through every level of our criminal justice system in the pursuit of lived and legal equality for transgender students and Americans. Or Alexander Morton, who was a student when this library was dedicated, became a Peace Corps volunteer in Addis Ababa, and went on to visit nearly 80% of the world's countries throughout the course of his life. For Peter, Carolyn, Josh, Alexander, and so many other proud Amherst alumni, a lifetime of reflection began within these walls under Robert Frost's name. And in dedicating this library to the revered poet, President Kennedy said, quote, "If sometimes our great artists have been the most critical of our society, it is because their sensitivity and their concern for justice, which must motivate any true artist, makes him aware that our nation falls short of its highest potential." And that is our ultimate American and human truth, that we are, in fact, a work in progress, flawed and fragile, sometimes selfish and cruel, but like any great masterpiece, we defy our own limitations. In the moments that matter most, we expand and extend. We rescue, we protect, we survive. We give, we open, we heal, and we help. And that, more than any law or leader, more than even the most powerful movements or moments in our history, that is what drives us towards progress. That is, in fact, the touchstone of our judgment. It takes time and persistence, and resistance and patience, but no single person, no bully, no stubborn monster like prejudice or injustice, in the end, none of it can match the small, personal, courageous ways Americans choose goodness every single day. In a poem that was left undelivered on a cold, snowy day on the Capitol steps in 1961, when a young Massachusetts senator was set to become our nation's president, Robert Frost perfectly illustrated that optimistic calling. He was to say, "There's a call to life a little sterner, and braver for the earner, learner, yearner. Less criticism of the field and court, and more preoccupation with the sport. It makes the prophet and all of us presage the glory of a next Augustan age, of a power leading from its strength and pride, of young ambition eager to be tried, firm in our free beliefs without dismay, in any game the nations want to play. Poetry and politics may appear to live in dissonance, but excellence in either demands many of the same qualities: an embrace of human imperfection, a deep faith in the bonds of shared experience, an eye for opportunity that others might pass by, and a belief that this life, this earth, this fleeting time that we share together, it's worth fighting as hard as we can to get it right. And so to you, Amherst, I want to thank you for supporting each other and for training generation after generation of leaders who help ensure that we will get this right. Thank you for allowing me to participate today.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy. What a beautiful speech. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We're honored. I want all of you to join us now for a reception in the library, where you will also be treated to an exhibition that has been planned and put in place by the staff of the library under the direction of our archivist, Mike Kelly. It includes a manuscript of President Kennedy's address, a signed Robert Frost manuscript, wonderful photography from 1963 when President Kennedy was here, correspondence from President Kennedy to President Cole and to Amherst faculty, and a wide range of other extraordinary items. So it's gorgeous out here. Standing here, it's especially gorgeous looking out. It's impossible not to love this place and to love all of you who contribute so much to it. Let us thank Congressman Joseph Kennedy III again for the honor of being here and speaking with us today, and join me in the library. Bye-bye.